Navim and Namo Buddhaya to you all, and welcome to our ninth lesson in the series of our 10 lessons course on Buddhist philosophy. And today we'll be looking at something very interesting. So let me begin by sharing my PowerPoint presentation. So the ninth lesson today in our course on Buddhist philosophy is time, impermanence, and momentariness. Because these are all the questions that emerge after having a discussion on different aspects of the Buddhist philosophy that we have been studying from last 8 weeks. And this question about time, impermanence, what is momentariness, what is the ultimate nature of the things, this question pop up all the time whenever we study the Buddhist philosophy in depth. So today, to begin with, as we have seen in the past sessions and past lessons, that reality is not made of things. So it is not that there is some substance eternal which never changes is the aspect of reality. We have not discovered that. Nobody has discovered this yet, that there is anything permanent in the world. In fact, we have seen the reality is processual in a sense that the reality is relational, that everything comes into being depending on certain causes and conditions. So this sentence is very important, that reality is not made of things, it is made of events. So, there are events taking place all the time around us, but there is nobody who is causing the events. There is not a prime mover or a god or a creator god which is creating the events. The events happen on its own. So this is going to be a very interesting lecture, because we are going to bring together a lot of good ideas, very beautiful ideas, but at the same time some of the slides I couldn't finish them because of the want of time. So forgive me for that to begin with. So let's dwell into it, that this is the bridge from lesson 8, where we have seen that every action reconstruct consciousness. We have seen, looking at the philosophy or teachings of Vasubandhu, that there is a deeper mind, and whatever we do, every action reconstruct consciousness. So, consciousness undergoes reconstruction all the time. Everything we do, everything we speak, everything we act upon has, ultimately reconstruct our consciousness. But that doesn't mean that we are the slaves of the past conditioning. The Buddha has taught that we can change the conditions if we make efforts anytime. So how is reconstruction possible? That's what we have to see in this lesson. So the oldest question in the world is, a thing changes. Nobody can disagree with that. That change is the law of the world. But what exactly remains the same? And this is the question that has been, uh, in the minds of philosophers or any thinking person for a long time. It's a old question. A thing changes, but what exactly remains the same? So, the paradox ultimately is, can anything remain identical while genuinely changing? See, we are changing all the time, undergoing a lot of changes, but at the same time, we have this experience that there is something which is not changing at all, and that's how we constitute the atta or self or the reference in the world. So can anything remain identical while genuinely changing? This is a very important question that we have to bear in mind. So let's move ahead. There are these two Greek philosophers, Parmenides and Heraclitus. They are very famous, two extreme intuitions about reality. So the Parmenides, of course, talked about true being cannot change, change threatens identity, and this is the visual I couldn't produce, but you can get the idea. And Heraclitus is very famous. You cannot step in the same river twice. That's what he said. And his teaching was this, that everything flows, stability is appearance, and these are the two views of the two Greek philosophers. So we're going to look at what was the Buddha's view. The Buddha's middle way was neither permanence nor chaos. So, there are patterns in the world depending on the causes and conditions. Like tree is a pattern. Like we can say genes are the patterns. There are patterns in the world. They arise depending on the causes and conditions. Like we have seen the example of a whirlpool. in the water, which is a pattern, but we cannot separate the whirlpool from the water. Helpful analogy to bear in mind that we have already covered. But here, what we are going to look at is a very important aspect of Buddhism, that Buddhism is neither permanence nor chaos. So Buddha is not saying that the things are random, they arise depending on the causes and conditions. So permanence, ordered becoming, and chaos. So you see, there is an order in the world, and the Buddha has called it niyams. Like, there is an order of decisions, there is an order of bija, there is an order of mind. Mind, works in a particular way, and that's very important to understand. And not that the orders are permanent. They arise and pass away, like the pattern that we see arising in the water or the clouds, or whatever we experience. So Buddhism is neither permanence nor chaos. So what is it all about? Impermanence. So what impermanence teaches us, that not merely that things end, rather conditioned existence is transformation. So this is a very profound formulation of the teachings of the Buddha, that the conditioned existence is transformation. So whatever is conditioned is already getting transformed. If there was no transformation, there would not be conditioned existence. That's a very important message that we have to bring, keep in our mind, that conditioned existence, whatever has come into existence depending on the causality or causes and conditions, is transformation. So conditioned existence is transformation. We cannot be the same in two moments, not possible. So impermanence is not merely that things end, but rather conditioned existence is transformation. So, the things are transformed all the time, from one thing to another, another thing to another thing to another. They are transforming all the time. So it is not the end of the things, it is a transformation. So the word is transformation. So I just put up an illustration about a tree. That tree is always, never, permanent. It's undergoing changes all the time. So conditioned existence, let's look at what is conditioned existence so that we have an idea. So whatever arises through causes cannot stand outside them. So very, very interesting sentence that will help us to understand what is conditioned existence. So the conditioned existence is whatever arises through causes cannot stand outside them. So we cannot separate whatever has arisen from the causes it has emerged. So arising depends on causes. Duration depends on support, how long that support is there, of the conditions. And dissolution follows when support shifts. And support is bound to shift, everything shifts. So this is how, we can construe what is called the conditioned existence in terms of, arising depends on causes, duration depends on support, dissolution follows when support shifts. So this is all about conditioned existence. Now let's go forward. And we have already studied 3 marks: anicca, dukkha, anatta. These are the core teachings of the Buddha. And impermanence is not isolated. It reshapes the meaning of self and suffering. So anicca, of course, we know impermanence or not always so, not nitya. Then dukkha, unstable when grasped. If we try to grasp something which is unstable as stable, we know that suffering follows. And then anatta, not self. We cannot find any inherent substance in anything, including ourselves. So these are the 3 marks, dukkha, anitya, anatma, that we have to bear in mind. This is the core teaching of the Buddha. This is the core finding of the Buddha. So we have to bear in mind that impermanence is not isolated. It reshapes the meaning of self and suffering. Okay, so we have to bear this in mind. Now, we can know impermanence through our bodies. The body as a process. The body is not a possession traveling through time. It's nutrition, breathing, aging, sensation, healing, fatigue, growth, and decay. The body is continuity without sameness. Okay, so this is what we have seen about body. We grow from an infant to the old man, if we are lucky enough to live that long. And you see, it's not, the body is not about a possession traveling through time. It's nutrition, breathe, aging, sensation, healing, fatigue, growth, and decay. So the body is continuity without sameness. Now we know mind also is, process, and we have seen it in our previous previous lessons, that impermanence. The mind as process, no thought remains in place long enough to be a self. There is no thought in us that remains stationary. There is sometimes slow thoughts, there is sometimes cascading of thoughts, but there is not a single thought that remains in our mind for a long time. And a feeling appears. Sometimes we feel happy, sometimes we feel joyful, sometimes we feel sad, sometimes we feel neutral. The feeling arises and passes away. It appears and passes away. We see perceptions. Whenever feelings arises, we name it that this is good, this is bad, this is tree, this is whatever. And whatever conditions we have in our mind, a memory colors it. And intention moves through it. And we have seen the role of intention in the last few classes, that how intention is the karma. And then another mind moment arises. You see, so this is what happens in our mind. And Buddhism or the Buddhist philosophers have even went on to the level where they have tried to show the various qualities of mind and how mind functions. They created beautiful models of mind, as we have seen in the previous lessons. So the mind as a process, no thought remains in place long enough to be a self. A feeling appears, a perception names it, a memory colors it, an intention moves through it, then another mind movement arises. So, observation. If we observe our one single breathing, okay, where does it remain identical? No two breathings are identical. Not even in a single breathing, we can see anything identical. It's just process going on. The millions of the molecules of oxygen is passing through our nose, and then molecules of CO2 coming out of our nose. This is happening all the time. And you can imagine, if you think it right now, if you observe your one breath, we will find that it is not identical. Our breathing changes. Sometimes if we are angry, our breathing becomes fast. If we are very happy, contented, our breathing becomes deep and slow. We can all experience that. Sometimes our breathing is long, sometimes our breathing is short. That's what Buddha asked us to observe in Anapanasati Sutta and Satipatthana Sutta. Observe your breathing, observe your body, observe your posture, observe your feelings, observe your mind, and observe the reality itself. So you see, this is very interesting, that even if the life, our life is sustained by breathing, even that breathing is not identical. It's different all the time, different molecules all the time. So let's look at momentariness, because if everything changes, what is the smallest unit of change? So that was a question even faced today. And some of the people, they talk about, in the quantum mechanics, they talk about quantum length, the time duration, which cannot be further divided, which is very, very, we cannot even think about it. The small length, Planck length, beyond which we cannot go. So, the scientists are talking about this lot of things with a lot of experiments, but that is not our question. Our question is more philosophical, more directed to how we can end our sufferings, how we can know the reality, the nature of reality. So if everything changes, what is the smallest unit of change? So that was the question. Moment, Shana, has been bothering all the time. Then there are this word Shana Bhangur. We know this word in Indian languages. So the Shana, Chitta Shana, what is the unit of change of mind? So these are the questions that have baffled over the centuries, and even Buddhist philosophers were not, and they tried to look at these questions from the point of view of the insights of the Buddha and the momentariness. How long the things remain as they are. But we know that they cannot remain as they are, because they have to change. Transformation is the conditioned existence. So if everything changes, what is the smallest unit of change? Let's look into that. So what is a shana or khana in Pali? So it's not a clock time. We cannot say that, this is what is, nanosecond of time, shana. So a moment is analyzable occurrence. So the moment is analyzable occurrence. And 1 minute. So Shana is, of course, is not a clock time that we can perceive through instruments, because, we measure the time through different instruments. We don't know what there is till we measure it. And sorry. Okay. So Shana is, it arises under conditions. It performs a causal function. It ceases as another event follows. So you see, one thing leading to another. the analogy that is given is that of a, a ball, or, like how the discontinuous event can create a kind of a continuity, a semblance of continuity. But in reality, they are like, discontinuous event. Like if you hit a ball on, on a snooker table, one ball hits another, and that another ball, takes that energy and, hits another ball, like that. So it's not a clock time. A moment is an analyzable occurrence. It arises under conditions. It performs a causal function, and it ceases as another event follows. So you see, when the time arises, the shana arises and passes away. So even the momentariness is not momentary. So Vasubandhu, about momentariness, we have seen some of the teachings of Vasubandhu in the last sessions. And Vasubandhu says the world is analyzed as events, not substances. So that's what is the take of Vasubandhu. The Abhidharma imagination breaks. Let me admit some people. Hmm. 1 minute. A lot, two people are waiting in the room. I don't know how to. Okay, wait. Admit. Admit. Okay. Okay. So this is what is ashana, or momentariness, and it's not a clock time. A moment is an analyzable occurrence. It arises under conditions. It performs a causal function. It ceases as another event follows. So this is a very important analysis. So of course, Vasubandhu, he talks about the world as events, not substances. And the Abhidharma imagination breaks apparent whole into conditioned dharmas. The point is not dry classification, it is dismantling of false solidarity. So solidity. So we have seen how, the Buddhist philosopher, particularly, starting from the Buddha, then the Abhidharmic philosophers, and also Bandhu, the way they have analyzed the mind, not as, broken into substances, but as a dynamic process or events that are taking place, one thing leading to another, another thing leading to another. How our perception takes place, how our emotions come into being, how do we conceive the world the way we do, how we perceive the world wrongly. You see, that is what has been, very well analyzed by Vasubandhu, as we have seen in the previous lessons. The Abhidharma imagination breaks apparent wholes into conditioned dharma. Dharmas means the, what we can, elements of the dynamic reality, like chitta, chetasik, the mind, and, something that arises with mind together, chetasikas. And we know all these mental states which are classified by Abhidharma. If you want, if you are interested, it's a very beautiful short book written by Vasubandhu, 100 Dharmas, where he talks about in details the various aspects, various minds, what is positive mind, kusala mind, what is akusala mind. It goes very deep into that in a very short book. So Dignaga, of course, we have seen our favorite, one of our favorite philosophers. And he says he turns knowledge towards the particulars. He says what is immediately given is not a permanent universal. So, whatever we experience through our senses is not a permanent universal. There is no permanent universal, as he says. And whenever our eyes meet something, then we conceive, it's blue, it's red, it's square, whatever. So, that is how the perceptual perceptions happen, the raw perception, and in the process of naming or cognizing, or you know, uh, reducing it to an abstract symbol. So what is immediately given is not a permanent universal. So for example, we see a tree, any tree we see, it's not a permanent, is a permanent universal. We see a particular tree, but we conceive it as a tree because it has leaves, it has trunk, it has roots. So experience meets momentary particulars before language gathers them under names. So very profound sort of the teachings of Buddha, of course, and amplified by Dignaga. Experience meets momentary particulars before language gathers them under names. So, all the time the naming is taking place. We are naming these, classifying these. This is helpful to us to some extent or great extent. But if we attach our mind to the, this concept themselves, then, it leads ultimately to dissatisfaction. So, Dharmakirti, another great Buddhist philosopher, he says a thing is real because it can produce effects. This is a very advancement of the Buddhist philosophy that, it's not speculative. So reality is measured by causal efficacy. I have given you an example in the last lesson that if there is a photo or picture of bread, it cannot satisfy our hunger. So it has no causal relationship with, satisfying our hunger. But a piece of bread, real bread, if we eat it, it can satisfy our our hunger. So reality is measured by causal efficacy. To be real is not to sit behind appearances. To be real is to act. So you see, the reality produces the actions. So this is what Dharmakirti says. So this is the process Arthakriya taught by Dharmakirti. Reality as activity arises, acts, conditions, ceases, continues as effect. Very beautifully put. This flow chart arises, acts, conditions, ceases, and continues as effect. You see, so one thing leading to another thing leading to another, like that. So this is like a chain of causation that we can see: arises, acts, conditions, ceases, and continue as effect. So existence is not first. That is, sometimes we begin to see the reality topsy-turvy. We think that existence is first, but it's not. Existence is not first. Change is second. It's not like that. Existence is changing. So there is a philosophical concept: being is becoming. There is no being. Being is always becoming. That's what as Baba Ambedkar also put in the Buddhism. So existence is not first, change second. It's not like that. That's not sequential. Existence itself is changing. So this we have to bear in our mind. So how can there be continuity without substance? It's a big question that we have to, unravel. That how can the things appear continuous without substance, without there is any permanent inherent, self? How can they appear continuous? Continuous. How can there be continuity without self? So we can see the example of domino that I have given here, isn't it? So the energy of one domino is transferred to even if they are not connected. They affect the last domino. Like a river, there is no underlying eternal substance, but the river flows continuously. And such is the thing with the entire cosmos, that it continues without substance. And, it's true about everything that we experience. But if moment cease, how does anything continue? So, if everything is Shanabhangur, how does anything continue? So that is a question that we are going to deal with. So the river, we have this beautiful example of river. We have seen it, neither exactly the same nor completely different. The river is not a permanent object hidden beneath the water. It's pattern flow, channel, force, direction, renewal. That's what we have seen in terms of river. So that's how we can see the example of a continuity. We can see the example of a continuity in terms of a flame. A flame appears continuous because fuel, heat, oxygen, and light form an ordered succession. Continuity is causal renewal. So you see, this is what we can understand how the continuity is maintained even if there is no permanent self. The very beautiful example is that of a film. Whenever we go to theater, we see that the things are moving, but we all know that there are frames which are moving so fast. That's why we get the semblance of continuity. In fact, all the visuals are disconnected. So one frame does not travel into the another, into the next. The ordered sequence produces movement. Continuity is experienced, not purchased. So we experience the continuity, and it is not purchased. So Santan, this is a word in Pali for continuity. How does causal streams takes place? Moment one, conditions, then moment two, it conditions moment three. So that is how the luminous chain of events, each distinct but causally linked. So this is very, very interesting. Moment one, conditions moment two, conditions moment three, and it goes on and on. So continuity is also maintained by our memory, because we have this, we have these traces of the past in our mind, and we have seen how that is there in Alaya Vidyan. We have seen it in the previous sessions, previous lessons. So the past does not live inside a permanent self. A present memory is a present event. It causally shaped by earlier events. Continuity is inherited, not possession. So we do not possess it. It's inherited. One thing leading to another, conditions. So our memory is condition for the present event. And it's causally shaped by earlier events. So, sometimes we remember something from our childhood and it affects our present. So memory is very important. It creates a semblance of continuity. Then, of course, karma, responsibility survives without a soul. We have seen that. that there is no need of having a permanent soul in order for the responsibility to take place. That is karma, ethical action. So action leaves causal trace. Whatever we do, as we began our lesson today with, that it leaves causal traces. Traces condition latter moments. The latter person inherits the stream. So it's like a river, continuous flow of mind. Mind is itself called a river, in the Abhidharma philosophy. And this is how the karma operates. So what is a person? We have seen what is a person at length in our previous lessons, but just to recapitulate, a person is not a substance, not a soul, not a heap, mere heap, an unfolding causal history. So we are an unfolding causal history, our genes, evolution, our communities, where, the families and all, it's an unfolding causal history. So the puzzle of time, of course, whenever we think of past, present, and future, there arises puzzle of time. A lot of philosophy talks about what is the nature of time, but we are going to look at the Buddhist perspective on it. The puzzle of time, the present seems obvious until we try to find it. So even, we cannot know past because it's already gone. Future is yet to come. But even if we try to locate present, the moment we become aware of the present, it becomes past. So present seems obvious until we try to find it. This is a very interesting concept. So, the nowness, becomes past, as soon as we become aware of it. So when we identify the present, has it already become past, isn't it? So it's a very interesting sort of a puzzle of time. And so we are going to look at a few Buddhist schools, not at length, but in terms of the time. They are very deep philosophies, and I encourage all of you to read through them, understand them, study them. They yield so much knowledge. They yield so much of thinking and understanding. So time, what is the perspective of Sarvastivad? The bold answer is the three times purges reality. So according to Sarvastivad doctrine, all the three times are real. So past is real, present is real, and future is real. This view tries to secure continuity by granting reality to all three temporal modes. That's what Sarvastivad, asserts. Sautantrika, or the independent school, says the present event carries causal force. So only present event acts, and the present is conditioned by the past. Okay, so continuity does not require past things to exist now. It requires causal traces that condition present event. That is the take of Sautantrika. Even if you see, even in Buddhism, it's a 2,500 years school of thought, other than university, where people dwelt from Japan, Sri Lanka, India, not just in one part of India, in South India, North India, West India, China, Japan. There are Tibet, so many schools in Buddhism. So it's not that they agree to certain things. They have this very good dialogue taking place between them all the time. So debate is the very essential part of learning Buddhism, understanding Buddhism. And we have seen what Sarvastivada says, that everything exists, all the past, present, future exist. Sautantrika says no, present event carries causal force, only the present event acts. Continuity does not require past things to exist now. It requires causal traces that condition present events. Then there is Yogacara school. We have seen time cannot be separated from consciousness. The Yogacara says that time is experienced as order, one thing leading to another, another thing leading to another, continuity maintained by our consciousness. So the time is the concept of mind. Yeah, that's what Yogacara would say. And time has experienced order, memory, perception, experience, and karmic seeds shape how temporal continuity is lived. And we know, of course, the relativity of time. If we look at the examples from the modern science, modern physics, time is relative. Time is not, an absolute entity. For a fast moving person, the time changes. For the slow moving person, the time changes. Time changes depending on the frames. And now they have given the theory that space and time is interlinked. We cannot separate space and time. So they talk about space and time together. And they also talk about the fabric of space and time as gravity. We don't want to go into that. Just to bring to you that there are a lot of different understanding of time. And Yogacara says, according to Yogacara, time cannot be separated from consciousness. Time as experienced order. It depends on memory, perception, expectation, and karmic seeds shape how temporal continuity is lived. So Nagarjuna, of course, his take on time is time has no independent essence. Time is relational. It's relative. Time is relative. That's what the Einstein's theory of relativity would say. Past, present, and future are mutually dependent designation. None can be established by itself. That's what Nagarjuna would say. So time and dependent origination, let's look into that. We have studied dependent origination at length and in depth. So time and dependent origination events do not occur inside an independent time content. That was the physics of Newton's time, that there is fixed time, there is fixed present, past, and future. But according to the Buddhist scheme of the things, events do not occur inside an independent time container. So even the time is relative. So time is remembered, occurring, anticipated, related, designated. So this is what is the causal relationship. I'm not going to go into that. I just wanted to bring to you the time is also dependent, dependently arise, and there is no permanent independent time container where things takes place. Even the time changes. What is 2 minutes now can be 2 hours. Depending on how you measure it. So time is dependently designated. That's what Nagarjuna taught us, that it's not nothing, not an independent substance. So time is dependently designated. So we are dealing with this concept? Because they all arise on our previous on the discussion on our previous 8 sessions. And as I told you that these lecture series or lessons are produced in a way that you can always go back to the previous ones, then fast forward, study one deeply for a few times, and you begin to see all of things falling in place. So time is dependently designated, not nothing, not an independent substance. So let's look at how we can be free. This is the aim of Buddhism, that how we can be free and how our minds can be freed from these conceptual overloads. So freedom, meditation, the Buddha asks us to observe, not merely believe. So this is very important, that the Buddhism begins with observation. Buddhism doesn't begin with belief. Of course, we have to take something to begin with as hypothesis, but even we examine them. We don't believe that the world is permanent or impermanent. We observe. The Buddhism begins with observation. The Buddhist philosophy begins with observation. Buddhist philosophy begins with attention. Buddhist philosophy begins with exploration, examination, experiments, as we have seen in Dharmakirti's philosophy, that where reality has to act. So the photo of the bread is not real, but the bread is real because it satisfies our hunger. So Buddha asks us to observe, not merely believe. This is very important. So in our meditation we can see the sensation arises, feelings arises, thought arises, attachment reaches, insight releases. So we can see this very clearly, that if we begin to see our minds clearly, if we begin to observe clearly, Yoniso Mansikar, then we can that insight releases us. We can be free. If we observe deeply, if we find that there is no inherent self, it's a construct, then we are free from the operation of the self. So you see, this is what is the Buddha asks us to do. So of course, the element of freedom is ethics. Change makes cultivation possible. So a cruel habit is not eternal. It's nothing is going to last as it is. The habits change, though we are habituated so much that we think that this habit won't change. But if we really strive, if we really create the gap between action and the action reaction, then we can be free from those habits also. A cruel habit is not eternal. A compassionate habit can be trained. So we all can create the habit of compassion. Every action reshapes the stream. So the stream is not immutable. It's mutable. So we can change our entire life stream. We can change our entire mind stream. Subjected to, of course, the conditions and causes. So every action reshapes the stream. Compassion, every meeting is temporary, as we know, because beings change, respond now. This is what is it. So that's what the Buddha says, that if we have something some bad relationship with somebody, we cannot assume that we will always have time to prepare them. So he says act now. So because beings change, respond now. Because suffering changes, help matters. So it's not that people are suffering and we cannot do anything about that. If we help, suffering might change. Because life passes, kindness is urgent. So compassionate is very important. That's how we achieve the freedom of mind. So compassion. Now society, history is not destiny. No hierarchy is eternal merely because it calls itself ancient. That's, we are of course talking about caste system or racism. What has arisen through causes can disappear through causes. We have seen that. And of course, Baba Ambedkar, justice transforms history. Ambedkar Buddhism turns impermanence into a social doctrine of reconstruction, transformation. Human beings are not trapped inside inherited identities. We can anytime transform. That's what Baba Ambedkar, talks about inherent flexibility. So this is to bring in all together. Everything comes together here. The first 9 lessons now form one argument. No self, dependent origination, emptiness, valid knowledge. Then consciousness, ethics, time, liberation. So we have all seen this aspect, studied this in our, including today, the 9 lessons, that how everything comes together. And this is how we synthesize our course from lesson number 1 to lesson number 9. And we have studied non-self, we have studied dependent origination, we have studied emptiness, we have studied valid knowledge, we have studied consciousness, we have studied ethics, we have studied time, we have studied liberation. And this is how everything comes together. So to end up our lesson today, before we discuss, nothing endures by remaining the same. Everything endures only by changing. Freedom begins when we stop demanding permanence from what is inherently dynamic. So this is in a nutshell what this lesson is all about. So you can see that these lessons have been very interesting because we have been looking at studying deeply the various aspects of Buddhist philosophy, and we have seen how the philosophy developed, with basic fundamental experiences of suffering, all the way up to understanding the nature of reality. It's much more deeper, it's much more detailed. What I tried to do is try to condense a lot of things in the course of 9 lectures, which is, of course, cannot go substantially deeper into the Buddhist philosophy. It's a vast, it's like an ocean. You can enter it, you can never get out of it. This is such a beautiful, domain of knowledge, the Buddhist philosophy is. So we have just touched the surface, but at the same time, sometimes we also touch the depth. And we have seen how all these things come together, how all these things, fall together. And I think that is the beauty of Buddhism that we have to bear in our minds. So I think what we will do, we will open up the class for brief reflections. Anything that you would like to share? Okay. So if you have any reflections or anything you want to share on the class or whatever we studied so far, so that we can reflect together. I know these classes have been little bit complex because the ideas are not easy to understand, and it will take a lot of time, efforts. And as I said, even if these classes can encourage a few of us to become serious about Buddhist philosophy, read and understand, practice, cultivate, that is the success of the lessons. So please go on if anybody has anything to say. Okay, so last slide, Sunny wants to. No, Sunny, so this is the last slide. Can you see? Nothing endures by remaining the same, not possible. Everything endures only by changing. Freedom begins when we stop demanding permanence from what is inherently dynamic, isn't it? So if we want to contain something into concepts, it's not good. Even if we say it's tree, that's a designation for something which is transforming all the time. We say a river, but the river is undergoing transformation, change all the time. But we have created a short and a concept. And we have seen this, to direct perceptions and then inferred perceptions. We have studied that, how, we create the symbols, based on the sounds. This linguistic is very beautiful. If we study how the sounds, the tree doesn't know that it's a tree, but for our sake, we have called it a tree, isn't it? And then Once we call it a tree, we can connect it with other different concepts. We can manipulate. You see, so the designations are important. They help us to survive in the world, but they are not everything. They are just pointers. Okay. So anything else?
Very, very profound lecture today, Dr. Sir. Thanks for that.
Welcome.
Only thing that is haunting my mind, and I'm trying to grasp the essence. Is it we are moving from emptiness to something concrete,
No,
and
basically this
that
is
concrete also is having emptiness?
this emptiness doesn't mean nothing. That is what we have seen. It means no thing, no substance. Emptiness is not nihilism,
Yeah.
right? Emptiness is what? That if you try to find out the essence of anything, any substance, sabhava shunyata. So, for example, we say the molecule of the gold has a sabha of gold. But if we break the molecule of the gold, go deeper into it, what do we find? Isn't it? We find various fields. We don't even find the particles. We find various fields. So there is sabhav shunyata. So emptiness doesn't mean nihilism or there is nothing. Emptiness means that the reality is relational, that dependent origination. Things arise depending on the causes and conditions, right? So there is no nihilism, there is nothing. Buddha doesn't say that the world is empty. Buddha is saying that the world is empty of, word is empty of. So what is word is empty of? It's empty of any substance, any inherent reality. The reality is relational. So it's not that, concrete or whatever, the experience of concrete or solid is also created by our mind, because, we cognize a particular thing. Of course there is solid, but we don't know what is solid unless it is mediated by our senses. So whatever we experience in the world, it's always mediated by our senses. Always, always, always. Right? So whatever we call concrete is one of the aspects of our experience. Whatever we call liquid is one of the aspects of our experience. Of course, the things are out there, but we don't know exactly on what level. We are perceiving at them at the level of our senses. But if we, as I told you, the example of X-rays, if we could perceive the X-rays, we would see the world differently. Like, for example, we know that there are galaxies far off, but we cannot travel that far. The light cannot simply reach from that distance. They are so far away. We cannot even imagine the distance. But yet we are able to figure out how. So it is called the radio telescopes. They measure very subtle radiations. They call cosmic radiation. There is a cosmic buzz around us. You see, so what I'm trying to get it at is that the world is empty of any substance. That it doesn't mean that there is a nihilism. Nothing exists. You got it? Everything comes into being depending on the causation and condition, and the reality is relational, right?
Right, sir.
Don't
So,
don't
so,
despair.
so, so,
Yes.
how to, yeah, yeah. Now, how to means capture this emptiness to visualize the things? Means it's fine. We go on cutting down the things, and at the last we will find different perspectives and perceptions will arise. But
I
how
think
to get
yes.
the control through
See,
emptiness?
I don't think we can perceive emptiness, right? Because the perception of emptiness is, it's still a perception, right? And
Yeah.
what we can begin to see how one thing leads to another. Like, for example, if we sit with our minds, we know that there is no emotion constant. Always our mind is changing. One thing leading to another, another thing leading to another, another thing leading to another. Then there is some intervention. We are deep in meditation, some loud noise. Then our mind is directed towards that, right? So the point is, we can experience it our mind. We can understand our mind. That is the deepest, greatest teaching of the Buddha. We can understand the very structure that makes our experience possible. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
We can totally
sir. Yes, sir.
totally understand our mind, the structure of mind, the deep mind, the surface mind. We can understand the mind. And if we begin to understand our mind, how these our structure of mind, creates the experience. I think, that is the beauty of Buddhism. That's why Buddha talks about knowing your mind, knowing how you think, knowing how
Yeah.
you behave.
Sir,
Hmm. Yes, go on.
so we can take that to grasp the thing that everything is means continuously,
Hmm.
and that that shana that we have studied today,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
we have to pause it in our mind to get the present, because
We
as
cannot
the
pause
river
anything.
example and the flame example.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But we cannot in reality pause anything. We can just understand
No,
it. We
to
can just,
understand the concept.
yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Because
yes, sir, please.
you got it. We cannot stop what is the law of nature, the law of mind. We cannot stop. We can understand the law of mind. You see, we can understand how our mind functions. We can understand how our mind hold on to concepts, how it creates the conceptual edifice. We can see how our mind creates various visions. So that's why Buddhism begins with ditti, isn't it? Knowing, understanding the way it is, the nature of our mind, the nature of our experiences. You see, Umeshji, what I'm getting at?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Huh? So if in our
We have to
if,
go very deep.
yes, we have to understand our mind deeply. See,
And
yes.
yeah,
No, if for example, if we have some perception about somebody, they are like that. But we sometimes, they might change. They might be different beings now, right? But we live as if they are perpetually bad people or perpetually good people,
yeah, it's a universal fact that perception is projection.
right?
Means what
Very
we are
beautifully put.
perceiving with that we are
That's
projecting.
totally
सर
Buddhist way of
Thank
सर
you,
thinking.
thank you, thank you.
सर मेरा एक छोटा सवाल है, जब
Yes.
हम वी ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड आवर माइंड,
Yes.
तो जो हमारी मेमोरीज हैं, पास्ट मेमोरीज हैं,
Hmm.
आर दे पार्ट ऑफ माइंड
There
या?
are traces. No, there are traces. We have seen the model of mind, the Alaya mind, right? So whatever we whatever we do, it leaves traces, like fragrance of a incense. So whatever we do, it leaves traces. It leaves
तो
traces in mind.
हाउ बुद्धिज्म हेल्प अस टू कम आउट ऑफ, देयर आर सर्टेन स्कूल्स, प्राइवेट कोचिंग्स, दे से कि वी विल हील यू, यू आर, वी विल मेक यू फ्री फ्रॉम पास्ट मेमोरीज, तो हाउ आवर बुद्धिज्म हेल्प अस?
Yes, very beautiful question. I think, see, nobody can heal any other person. No, we have to give people tools so that they can heal themselves, right? And Buddhism has got
बहुत बड़ा बिजनेस है ये.
बहुत बड़ा बिजनेस है ये, एंड बुद्धिस्ट शुड एंटर इनटू दिस बिजनेस, गिविंग टूल्स टू पीपल, वर्ल्ड में वही हो रहा है अभी, देखो,
हाँ.
जो मतलब माइंडफुलनेस बेस्ड स्ट्रेस
और ट्रॉमा,
रिडक्शन.
चाइल्डहुड ट्रॉमा आपके साथ है, आपके साथ ये है, आपके साथ वो, टॉक लाइक दिस थिंग.
No, Buddhism is a very deep, we cannot call it psychotherapy, because it is not a negative psychology. It of course helps you to deal with your issues, but it's a very positive psychology. It's a psychology of liberation.
और सर ये वसु बंधु का किताब पीडीएफ है क्या?
मैं देखता हूँ, रहेगा तो भेजता हूँ
प्लीज
मैं
हो
आपको.
तो शेयर करना प्लीज.
बहुत अच्छी अच्छी किताबें आए हैं अभी, बहुत लोग
तो
अच्छा अच्छा
आप
लिख.
पीडीएफ शेयर कीजिए, क्योंकि बड़ी कॉस्टली है ओरिजिनल बुक्स तो बड़ी.
तो ओरिजिनल बुक बहुत कॉस्टली, बड़े बड़े यूनिवर्सिटी प्रोड्यूस करती है ना उसको.
हाँ ये है.
मैं बनाऊंगा इसका पीडीएफ आपको
ठीक.
सबको, मतलब
ठीक है.
भेजूंगा मैं क्लास में, है ना?
ठीक है.
देयर
ठीक
आर
है. ठीक.
वंडरफुल बुक्स नाउ.
हम्म.
ओके, एनीवन हैज एनीथिंग टू से?
थैंक यू. थैंक यू आपका
वेलकम.
बहुत. वी एंजॉयड ऑल योर सेशन सो मच कि वी वी डोंट, क्या बोलना चाहिए, मिस करना है मींस वी विल बी वेरी ग्रेट लॉस टू मिस योर
थैंक यू
लेसन्स.
सर, थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू.
अतुल्य, अतुल्य है, अतुल्य.
थैंक
नॉट
यू.
अतुल्य
कंपेरेबल,
नहीं है,
बहुत
अतुल्य
profound.
नहीं है.
थैंक यू सर. लेकिन अभी
हाँ
चलो,
जी,
अभी इसके ऊपर
जी
डिस्कस
साहब.
करते हैं. मुझे खुशी होती है आप बोलते तो, लेकिन अभी अपना डिस्कशन अलग है ना. ओके,
हाँ.
एनीबडी, राहुल?
Yes, Jai Bhim sir. Jai
जय
Bhim everyone.
जय जय.
Yes, actually, as you said earlier, na, this is a very complicated subject and very difficult to understand. But from the superficial point of view, whatever I could grasp today, I would like to say in two or three points.
Hmm.
So, firstly, you said about the class, one example of classification and the concept of trees, how we are renaming that one. So, I just related it to that the AI training means I did one AI training course.
Hmm.
So, the way you are explaining this philosophy, the same way actually the AI being trained.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That is
So,
one thing. Another thing I found is that you said about the continuity and this thing. So, I recall the Buddha's one sentence that
hmm.
flow of thought is mind.
Hmm.
So that is the continuity, and another is in relation to the technology again that we refer one term regarding the generative AI. So
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
said that whatever we are grasping is through our senses only.
Hmm. Hmm.
So whatever senses we are having, including mind, we have six senses.
Hmm.
So visualizing, speaking, seeing. So with these three things only, we are generating things. So that is a broader category of AI, the generative AI. But still, there are senses, there are fragrances,
Hmm.
and smelling. So these all need to be means
Yes.
yet developed and produced. So means how our you can say ancestors or the Buddhist people have just prepared a background and big database means who were want to work in that field. They have a lot of things ready for us.
Hmm.
It's little difficult to grasp, but this is I just try to explain in some technical point of
Good,
view
good,
which I
good.
understood.
Very good,
Thank you.
Raghav.
Thanks.
Hello, very, very good. You see, we have this is our ninth lesson. We have gone through eight lessons, and they were I reckon that they were very useful, and they can clarify a lot. And I think some of the people they write to me saying that they found them very helpful. So uh, we have to have this tradition of studying Buddhism deeply. One of the aims of conducting these classes is to really get people interested into the aspects which are deeper, like this knowledge that we are talking about. It's centuries of accumulation. Nalanda, Vikramshila, Takshashila, you name it. These great masters were from various parts of India. Dignag, Dharmakirti from South India, you see, and Vasubandhu from Peshawar. Very great people, and the way they have, conceptualized, the way they have, tried to help us to understand the nature of reality. They were like one of the Buddhist monks says, today we talk about the astronauts. They were the astronauts of mind, consciousness. They have mapped the mind very deeply, left, right, and center. You see, mind is not easy domain to enter into. We can enter, we can see the world, but it's very difficult to understand mind, isn't it? So deep, so
Yeah.
mysterious.
अच्छा सर, हमारे यहाँ आपने बातला माइंड, वी रीड माइंड, लेकिन बाकी जगह ना कॉन्शियस माइंड, सबकॉन्शियस माइंड, लाइक, तो हम बुद्धिज्म में तो ये बाइफरकेशन है नहीं. माइंड
Well,
इज माइंड.
mind is mind, but
यस.
there is a model of mind, no? It's how mind functions, right? Right? Mind is also paticca samutpad. So how mind works. So for example, we have been talking about this in the previous lessons that when photon strikes our eyes, they are converted into electrical signal and image in form, and that is how we understand something, right? So this is all processes explained in Buddhism also very beautifully. Then whatever our mind strikes comes in contact, fussati, or what is called the touch. Touch leads to feelings, sensations, isn't it? That sensations can be pleasant or unpleasant or neutral.
नहीं, मेरा क्वेश्चन कॉन्शियस कॉन्शियस माइंड एंड सबकॉन्शियस माइंड.
These are
लाइक,
all classifications. Buddhism have different ways of understanding mind. Look at it as a ways of understanding, right?
पर
Right?
हमने बुद्धिज्म में ये नहीं पढ़ा कॉन्शियस और सबकॉन्शियस. मैं ये कह रहा हूँ.
No, so we have not studied that. No, we have studied what
हाँ, हाँ.
study Alaya Vidyan. We have studied Manovigyan. We have studied Manovidyan. We
मेरा
have
मतलब
studied.
कभी सुना भी नहीं बुद्धिज्म में तो माइंड है.
But mind,
Mind and chitta, I think, sorry to interrupt.
no, no, please
Mind
go
and
on.
chitta, I think that is related to those things. Where is chitta and where is mind? Because there are certain different, means we can say the words are different, the definitions are different. But what I understood is that when you are saying that photons come onto our retina and then some reflex actions happen. So there are different terminologies this modern science is giving, but that all fits. Like the chitta and mind are two related. Like those times when chitta got activated. So what I understood it like whatever uh, thoughts or the thought process or the programs we are storing inside, we can say in our brain or somewhere else, so that we called as chitta, and when that is in action, that we called it as mind. So it also has a, you can say, a trigger to activate that particular type of chitta, like we have different apps in our Android phone.
Yes.
So that is why I understood. Yeah.
तो महेंद्र जी देखो क्या है कि माइंड
There
जो
is
है, माइंड इज जस्ट अ नाउन, बट इन बुद्धिज्म माइंड इज अ वर्ब, right? It's mind is not some entity. Mind is a process.
Yes.
Okay, mind is a process, and then we
there
have
is one question, sir. There is
yes.
one there is one question that focus on this concept.
Hmm.
The question is, where do thoughts go when we forget them?
Hmm. Yes. See,
If
you
we
see,
focus on the answers, then we yeah.
we are talking about a very deep concept here. No scientist has yet defined what is consciousness. This is very difficult area for physics. This is very difficult area for physics, chemistry, biology to define consciousness. There are theories,
Yeah.
and there are various models proposed by for the mind by the science. Buddhism has its own model which works because we can all experience that. If we behave with negative thoughts and mind, the suffering follows. It's a very simple models of mind. And this very question of consciousness is boggling the scientific world, to philosophers. Now this is, they say that, the problem of consciousness will be solved in 20 years, 30 years. We don't know. And what is consciousness? We all experience that. We all, live according to that, but we don't know what is consciousness, right? It's like, they say example of, it's like an eye is trying to see itself, isn't it? Or you see, the mind is trying to know itself. This is the greatest of the mystery of the universe, that the mind is trying to knowing itself. So, there are a lot of these questions, queries raised by the Buddhists about mind. It's not an easy thing. It's not a thing itself, thing at all. It's all there is that we experience. All our experiences come because of the consciousness. So these are the questions, fascinating questions. We should go on discussing them and finding the solution, reading a lot, and the best way to understand yourself by, sitting with yourself, sitting with your mind. So I think they are very fascinating questions that I think, we should be all looking at. But one thing is clear, that mind is not an entity. Mind is not a substance. Mind is a process. Mind is, is dependent, dependently arising. Okay. So
It's
fascinating questions and fascinating remarks by all of you. Before we end up, if there is anything that anyone like to share or comment on? Parimal, Satish, Sadi has said, Shruti, Arshada, if you have anything to say before we end. So next week we will be meeting for the last session for this 10 lessons course, and I think we will see some of the aspects. I'll try to bring in some of the aspects that we have been discussing today.
Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim, sir. I'm Harshada.
Arshada, yes.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you so much for this sessions.
Well,
Actually, it was very difficult to understand. So there are so many concepts. There are so many concepts for new us.
yes,
But you are providing the Zoom links, recording Zoom links.
yes,
So we
yes.
are going. Yeah, we are listening again and again.
No,
So
good.
we'll learn.
No, no, good,
Thank
good,
you so much, sir.
good, Arshada, good. Very good.
Yes, sir.
So, see you next week, 10 o'clock, and we will have our last session then. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddha.
Jai Bhim, Namo
Jai
Buddhaya.
Bhim, Namo Buddhaya, sir.
yeah, sir.